Guilty of murder, the stepmother and father of Sarah Sharif are convicted at the Old Bailey. The 10-year-old was abused, burnt and beaten to death by Bainash Batul and Irfan Sharif. Her body abandoned in the family home and they fled to Pakistan. Today they were brought to justice.
I've seen a lot of child abuse cases. These must be the worst injuries that I have come across.
The desperate case of Sarah Sharif has horrified even long-serving professionals. A bleak young life of cruelty at the hands of those who should have loved and cared for her, apparently able to brutalise the little girl under the noses of social services. How could it have happened? Also tonight, as Syria's new leaders call for calm, we uncover new evidence of the terror imposed by Assad and his henchmen. Here, an exclusive interview on the post office scandal. The police tell ITV News they're not ruling out corporate manslaughter charges. At 7, more evidence of the dangers of unlicensed drugs. A special report on the young mother whose sudden death is being blamed on weight loss drops.
They're taking them to feel better about themselves or to numb pain. But what about people's families? Like, I'm never going to see my sister again.
And a Christmas miracle, the school nativity starring a real-life menagerie.
I really liked its sound. It was quite fun. Like a...
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. We begin tonight with the horrifying case of Sarah Sharif, a bright 10-year-old girl beaten to death by her own family after years of appalling abuse. Today at the Old Bailey, her taxi driver father, Irfan Sharif, and her stepmother, Bainash Batul, were both convicted of her murder. Her uncle, Faisal Malik, was found guilty of allowing the death of a child. Sarah's broken and battered body was found abandoned by her parents in a bunk bed at their home in Woking. Despite neighbours hearing screams, the concerns of teachers and indeed the attentions of social services, it seems there was nobody to help the defenceless young girl. You may well find Ellie Pitt's report upsetting.
Sarah Sharif told her teachers she wanted to be a singer when she grew up. Instead, her primary school now gives out the Sarah Singing Award in her memory.
She loved to just talk about her singing, her dancing, her plans, her dreams. So we'll always remember her as that really confident, very smiley, full of energy and life little girl. She was such a cheerful little soul, and I think that's what's really heartbreaking.
An investigation conducted. You are suspected of her murder.
Those responsible for Sarah's brutal death were her father,
from the injuries sustained by her
stepmother, and uncle. This was the moment their time on the run was over. Sarah's torment and torture started years before. To anyone who stepped into the Sharif house in Surrey, they would have found the appearance of a pristine family home. But it was within these four walls that Sarah endured horrific assaults. The prosecution said her injuries were deliberately hidden under her hijab, which she started wearing in the months before her death. But bruises were noticed at school, and she was referred to social services, who looked into her case but decided to take no further action. Sarah died on the 8th of August 2023. She had signs of a traumatic brain injury, had been burnt with an iron, and had at least 25 fractured bones. She had also been bitten. A forensic dental expert confirmed her father and uncle did not bite her, but Binish Batul refused to provide a mould of her teeth. Irfan Sharif admitted that he had used a cricket bat and pole to beat his daughter.
I've been a prosecutor for a long time now, and I've seen a lot of child abuse cases. These must be the worst injuries that I have come across. The suffering that Sarah would have had as a result of this catalogue of serious injuries is like nothing I've seen before.
We don't know what happened in Sarah's final hours, but her injuries tell us that in the weeks before her death, she was likely experiencing daily pain and suffering. It's now been found that every adult living in this house either inflicted or must have known about the violence she was being subjected to, and so they are all responsible for her death.
Pakistan you want to go, ma'am?
Islamabad. The very night Sarah died, her stepmother made this phone call to a travel agent asking about flights to Pakistan.
8:50 at night, tomorrow night.
Is there anything in the morning?
And the following morning, they went to the airport and escaped. Then, from Pakistan, Sharif called police in the UK.
How have you killed your daughter?
I beat her up. It wasn't my intention to kill her, but I beat her up too much.
Officers were sent to the Sharif house.
Police, hello, anyone in?
Where upstairs, in a bunk bed under the covers, they found Sarah's body. An international hunt for Sharif, Malik and Batul began. As detectives in Pakistan were searching for them, Irfan Sharif and Binish Batul released this video.
Firstly, I would like to talk about Sarah. Sarah's death was an incident. We are willing to cooperate with the UK authorities and fight our case in court.
After more than a month on the run, they realised it was over, and they flew back to the UK where police were waiting. Through their brutal beatings or complicit silence, they each played their part in Sarah's death.
Every institution that had dealings with Sarah and her family has questions to answer tonight. There had been multiple warning signs from very early on in Sarah Sharif's troubled and brief childhood. But neither her school, the social services, the police, or even the family courts were apparently able to prevent her terrible fate. This report is from our social affairs correspondent, Sarah Corker.
Sarah Sharif's brutal murder is the latest in a long line of tragic cases stretching back decades. Children tortured in their own homes and failed by a child protection system struggling to cope. Victoria Climbié, baby Peter Connolly, and more recently, Arthur Labinio Hughes, Star Hobson and Finlay Bowden. How does this keep happening?
Sarah Sharif has been totally failed. She's been totally failed by the system. You know, we need to get justice for her and we need to make sure this never happens to any other child again. It's horrific.
Sarah had been known to social services from birth, spending time in foster care before the family courts granted her father, Irfan Sharif, custody in 2019, a man with a history of violence against women who then killed his own daughter. And Sarah's stepmother, Binish Batul, showed no remorse, no emotion.
Do you love Sarah?
No comment.
Did you care about her at all?
No comment.
It was 2022 when teachers first noticed Sarah had a bruise under her left eye. 6 months later, she started wearing a hijab to conceal her injuries. In March 2023, teachers again noticed bruises on Sarah's cheek and eye. At this point, they made a referral to social services. But just 6 days later, after a phone call with her father, social workers decided to take no further action. More bruises were seen by teachers, but by April, the 10-year-old was withdrawn from class to be homeschooled. By August, Sarah was dead. The Children's Commissioner says there needs to be proper monitoring of children being educated at home.
The law in this country needs strengthening so that children who are at risk like this cannot be home educated, and that needs to happen now.
Surrey County Council is now carrying out a safeguarding review into her death. Irfan Sharif was arrested 3 times for domestic abuse and threats to kill ex-girlfriends. And one of the major questions now for the authorities is whether that crucial information was properly shared between agencies such as social services and the police, and whether they were fully aware of the risks he posed to Sarah. Sarah was surrounded by violence throughout her life. This is her natural mother, Olga Sharif, talking to Polish television. The family had been well known to social services and police for more than a decade. Both parents had accused each other of child abuse.
One of the most striking features of Victoria's case, however...
It's more than 2 decades since Lord Laming chaired the inquiry into Victoria Climbier's horrific murder. Today, he warns reforms have not gone far enough.
Services have rather withdrawn into themselves, and that has led, in my view, to a crisis-driven service where services don't really become involved until the crisis, and sometimes, frankly, it's too late then.
Help came too late for Sarah, and child safety campaigners warn the same failings are being repeated year after year.
Every time this happens, what we say is lessons will be learned. Have we learned anything? No. Could Sarah still be here today? Should she still be alive? Yes. Could this have been prevented? Yes. And it's not just social services who are responsible. We are all accountable for the most vulnerable children in our society.
Sarah's death is another tragic warning that there is something seriously wrong with the child protection system in this country. Sarah Corker, ITV News.
Well, Ellie Pitt is with us now. Ellie, we just heard, didn't we, in Sarah's report and the final speaker in that report saying every time stories like this happen, and it seems to be way too often, the same phrases are trotted out, aren't there? Lessons will be learned. It must never be allowed to happen again. And yet it does. Here we are, another dead child.
Exactly, Mary. I mean, one of the things that stands out in this case is the contrast between the public image this family put out and the private hell that Sarah must have been experiencing. Neighbours told the court that the family seemed well put together. We saw pictures from inside their house. It was pristine, and those things no doubt make it more difficult for local authorities to detect issues. But the fact remains that this child, Sarah, was known to social services since birth, and referrals were made again to them in the months before her death. Now, the criminal aspect of this case is complete now, but there are still so many questions for that safeguarding review that will take place next. We're told that could take up to a year to complete. Now, we know that councils are cash-strapped, that social workers have enormous caseloads and more of them are needed. But it will be interesting to see from that review whether there were specific factors that took place in Surrey and why those chances to save Sarah were missed. Perhaps then, Mary, we won't be reporting on the death of another child who had contact with social services.
Yeah, Ellie Pitt, thank you. OK, well, let's move on now to Syria, where yet more horror has emerged following the overthrow of the Assad regime. The country has now seen an interim government installed, calling for a period of stability and calm. But new evidence is emerging every day, it seems, of the terror imposed by Assad and his henchmen. Our international editor Emma Murphy visited a hospital in Damascus where the president and his family were treated, but which also housed a torture wing.
It is a gallery of horrors, and however dreadful the prospect, most here actually wish to find the images of their dead on the wall outside Mushtahed Hospital. At least then they know, and for some, after years, they can at least bury their lost loved one. Day after day, the number of bodies of the disappeared that are being found grows. Yet for others, there is no photo and no body, so the questions continue. This is another of the hospitals which has played host to some of the most heinous crimes of the Assad era. Hospital 601 in Damascus is where sick prisoners went not to be healed, but to be tortured and killed. Ahmed Koshan worked here throughout. Only now dare he speak of what he knew was going on.
Regarding the torture, sometimes we'd go to fix things there, and we just couldn't enter because of the stench. We'd hear them being insulted and abused, having cigarettes stopped out on their bodies.
These are some of those who died here. For some reason or no reason, they fell foul of the regime and died at their hands. The images of their lifeless faces, too awful to show, tell of relentless abuse and torture. So too do human rights groups who've documented the brutality. Detainees would be brought here blindfolded and were stripped of their name and given a number.
So this is the morgue here.
So many died, the size of the morgue had to be increased.
So the original fridge was not big enough, so they bought a vegetable fridge so it was big enough. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
Such was the fear, no one who knew spoke out.
Why did nobody say anything when they knew what was happening here?
We were frightened. The staff were scared to talk to them. We were so afraid if we did, we would be jailed too.
Incredibly, this was also the place Syria's most elite received the best of care.
This place is feared in Syrian society. Over there is where the torture chambers were, and yet here, on the 3rd floor, is where President Assad and his family were treated.
Those wards were locked when the regime fell. Those who took over are still not able to get into them. Families keep arriving at the hospital in the hope that relatives may still be here. Wazira and Sakur are searching for 2 brothers. They paid thousands to officials who said they might be in Hospital 601, but they aren't.
Why have you come here?
We've been to all the hospitals, we've been to the prison and into the basement there, but there's nothing. Our hearts are broken after 13 years of searching. The regime was bluffing us. We did everything they asked, and still nothing. Ahmed Rida is on the same quest for his brother. He knows he was here as the regime fell, but has no idea where he went after that. Some of the records are still at the hospital, yet even they offer false hope. The prisoners were identified only by numbers, denying their identity in life, and for so many, now in death. Emma Murphy, ITV News, Damascus.
Well, there is plenty more still to come in the ITV Evening News, including the mother of 2 who died suddenly after taking weight loss drops, not knowing they contained an illegal drug.
I don't think she would have took them if she knew exactly what was in them, if there was a risk of her never seeing her children again.
Could there be prosecutions over the post office scandal? ITV News spoke exclusively to the commander of the team investigating dozens of people.
How confident are you that you will be able to bring charges?
Ultimately, it's a decision for the Crown Prosecution Service. I'm optimistic that we will have some successes.
All that and more after the break. See you then. Again, welcome back. Now, dozens of current and former post office and Fujitsu staff are being investigated by the police over their role in the Horizon scandal. In an exclusive interview, the police officer leading the investigation told ITV News he was confident of getting results and did not rule out charges of corporate manslaughter. Police say any decisions will have to wait until after the public inquiry publishes its final report next year, and any criminal trials would not happen until 2027. Our investigations editor, Daniel Hewitt, has this exclusive report.
So far, only the spotlight of public scrutiny has fallen on post office bosses who oversaw the wrongful convictions of hundreds of postmasters. But as the public inquiry ends next week, attention turns to the criminal investigation. And today, the police commander in charge told us 100 of his officers are ready to step in.
How confident are you that you will be able to bring charges against individual people from the Post Office and from Fujitsu?
Ultimately, it's a decision for the Crown Prosecution Service. I'm optimistic that we will have some successes.
You talk about persons of interest. How many people are you focusing in on at the moment?
I think the best way to describe it is dozens of people. I'm always wary about pinning a number because it will change.
So you think the number of people you're looking at right now is going to increase?
Yes, definitely, yeah, it's going to increase.
Is Paula Venables, the Chief Executive, is Paula Venables one of your people of interest?
So I'm not going to name individuals, as you'll surely understand, it's a live investigation.
Can you assure postmasters that you are going after the people that ran the post office here?
Yeah, we will look at the offences I've talked about, and if that extends into management, yes, we will.
At least 4 postmasters took their own lives as a result of this scandal. People have died.
No, I'm aware of that, yeah.
Are you also looking at corporate manslaughter as a potential charge here?
You know, we're focusing on perjury and perverting the course of justice, but I'm not ruling out other offences if that evidence comes to light. And I am aware of a feeling around that, and there is a lot of material to go through. You know, 1.5 million documents alone.
We know that the Post Office historically has destroyed documents. We know that they have lost lots of documents. How would you describe so far their cooperation with your investigation?
Well, so we've had material from them. It's not as fast as I would certainly like. And when
is that police talk for pretty frustrating?
You know, we deal with a lot of, many investigations I've been involved with. Some organisations are better than others in terms of their responsiveness.
But any criminal trials are unlikely to begin until 2027. For former Sub-Postmaster Harjinder Bhutoy in Chesterfield, justice delayed is justice denied. The dad of 3 spent 18 months in prison in 2008, wrongly accused of stealing over £200,000.
I want someone charged, sent to prison the way they sent me. It really destroyed me. These people have done me, they've done our family over. Not just mine, look, hundreds of people out there.
Yeah.
But will that happen? I ain't got no faith in the police.
For the man in charge, he knows trust, like possible convictions, may not be earned quickly.
Yeah, well, they say they want someone charged, don't they? But why is it any prosecution, should they happen, will take so long?
The police today said that it's the Crown Prosecution Service who are insisting that they wait until the final report from the public inquiry. That is expected at some point next year. We don't know when next year. They worry that if they start bringing prosecutions forward now, that inquiry report, which is going to be massive, comes out and may undermine any case they're building. Enormous frustration, of course, for postmasters who've waited so long, and some are not going to be around in 2027 to see justice being sorted here. I sense today, though, frustration from the police, not just from the fact they are having to wait. I think they want to move faster as well. I got a sense of frustration today as well from their cooperation with the Post Office, which they say they've had difficulties with. The Post Office today did tell us that they are fully cooperating with the police inquiry. They've handed over 500,000 documents. That's not a sense I got from the police today, though.
Interesting. OK, Dan Hewitt, thank you. A London teenager has been jailed in Dubai for a year over his sexual relationship with a 17-year-old girl. 18-year-old Marcus Vakana met the girl, who's also now 18, while they were both on holiday with their respective families. The girl's mother reported the relationship, which is unlawful in the United Arab Emirates, to the authorities in Dubai. The Department of Health and Social Care says puberty blockers for children under the age of 18 who have gender dysphoria will be banned indefinitely in the UK. Experts from the Commission on Human Medicines warned of an unacceptable safety risk. And hundreds of farmers on tractors have brought central London to a standstill to protest against changes to inheritance tax. They flooded the streets around Parliament before Sir Keir Starmer took part in Prime Minister's questions. A government spokesman said they won't be changing course. Now, the names were revealed today of the committee of 23 MPs whose job it will be to scrutinise, line by line, word by word, the assisted dying bill. It is the next key stage for the bill as it passes through Parliament after MPs voted in favour of it just over a fortnight ago. Here's our UK editor, Paul Brand.
My dearest darling love, I have to release us both from this nightmare so I can be at peace and you can have some kind of normal life and be happy one day. You are the love of my life. We had a good life. Treasure it. Forgive me, Beverly.
Beverly's final note to her husband Peter is kept not among her personal possessions, but in a police file. The original was lost while he was questioned over her suicide. He'd returned home from a weekend away to find she'd ended her life and her suffering with terminal cancer.
A couple of hours after I'd initially found her body, maybe an hour or so after the police had arrived, I was put in the back of a police car and interviewed by the police as a, quote, significant witness in her death.
They thought that you may have killed her?
Yes, exactly.
Police cleared Peter, but he wishes someone had been allowed to help Beverly die peacefully.
Her life could have lasted longer with the option of an assisted death. She would have listened to the blackbird singing in the garden. She'd have listened to the skylarks, which she loved. She'd have had one more summer sitting in the sunshine in her garden.
The ice to the right, 330. The nose to the left, 275.
Last month, MPs voted to change the law in principle. Now they're working on the practicalities. Today, Kim Leadbeater nominated the committee who'll scrutinise the details of her assisted dying bill. The Palliative Care Minister, Stephen Kinnock, and Justice Minister Sarah Sackman will be on it, as well as 9 backbenchers who opposed the bill and 11 who voted in favour.
My view is, given the range of views and people who are on the committee, from all sides of the House, from all parties, there should be some confidence that that group can get the bill right.
Other members of the committee aren't certain that's possible before MPs have their final vote.
I genuinely want to go through it in a productive way, support the bill committee and get us to where we need to get to, and then make my decision, my final decision.
So you could still be swayed to vote in favour, potentially, if those safeguards were in there?
If those safeguards were, but at the moment, I'll be honest with you, Paul, I can't see us able to have the safeguards in place when it comes to coercion.
But Peter believes the bill would relieve pressure on those like Beverly, who died alone and died early, precisely because she couldn't ask for help. Paul Brandt, ITV News.
You are watching the ITV Evening News. It's a little after 7 o'clock, and here's what's still ahead.
Saudi Arabia. Mabruk.
It is no surprise, but is there cause for concern? Saudi Arabia is announced as the 2034 World Cup host. Celebrating the teenage photographer whose battle through cancer inspired the royal family.
Liz didn't want a funeral. She didn't want collective wailing. It's not her style in any ways. She wanted a celebration with her photos, with their favourite snacks, and she wanted us to raise as much money as we could.
I'll explain why at this school nativity there are no camel costumes required. That was almost my finger.
And we're here at the beautifully illuminated Leeds Castle in Kent. It's a bit chilly though. Join me for the full national forecast coming up later in the programme.
Well, that's all still to come, but first, ITV News can bring you yet more disturbing evidence of the potentially devastating consequences of buying unlicensed drugs which claim to help with weight loss. The family of a young mother of 2 told us they believe her sudden death could be linked to the drops that she'd been taken, which were labelled fat-burning serum. Sarah Thompson from Connors Quay in Wales was found dead in her bed by her own daughter. She was just 34. In this exclusive report, Sarah's family spoke to our health correspondent, Rebecca Barry, about their shock and their grief.
Sarah was a unique person. She loved her children. She loved her family.
A mum of 2, a sister and a daughter. 34-year-old Sarah Thompson had been through a lot. 6 years ago, she was diagnosed with throat cancer. Her voice box was removed and she was left having to breathe through a tube in her neck. It became difficult to exercise and Sarah put on a lot of weight.
She became very depressed in the way that she looked. There's only so much a person can take.
Desperate,
she bought these drops. Labelled fat-burning serum, she rapidly began losing weight.
She had a lot more confidence. Like, she felt like she could take on the world. She was ready to go out, achieve whatever's held her back for so many years.
She even gave some to her sister.
When I took them, you know, my whole body was shaking and my heart was going. She went, Gabby, just ride through it, because in the end, you'll be thankful for it.
Sarah too became unwell, repeatedly vomiting, unable to keep down any food or liquid. A week later, she was found dead in her bed by her 16-year-old daughter.
There's people out there that they're taking them to feel better about themselves or to numb pain. But what about people's families? Like, I'm never going to see my sister again because of this. You know, her children are going to grow up without their mum, and it's not nice. And no family should feel the pain that we feel.
It only happened in September, and they're still waiting for test results to confirm the cause of death, but they believe the drops were to blame.
I really wouldn't wish this pain upon anyone. You know, my sister was young, she was 34 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. You know, she had so many things planned and she had ambitions on what she wanted to do, but she's not going to be able to do that. And I think it is very unfair.
The product that Sarah bought is entirely different from authorised weight loss medications available on the NHS. We arranged for one of the bottles from Sarah's house to be tested in a laboratory. In its shiny packaging, it looks like cosmetics, a beauty product, but we found it contained clenbuterol, a Class C controlled drug not approved for human use. The maximum penalty for supplying it, 14 years in prison.
ITV News has found it's being sold online with various branding and flavours claiming to help with weight loss, but it brings serious risks.
It causes breathlessness, your heart rhythm might be out, on all sorts of other problems, dizziness. If you have high blood pressure or you have any other cardiac problems, then of course it can actually cause a heart attack.
Do you think Sarah had any idea what was in those drops?
I don't think she did, because as much as she wanted to be skinny, I don't think she would have took them if she knew exactly what was in them, if there was a risk of her never seeing her children again. I know she wouldn't have.
The family have spoken to us because they want to warn others about the risks.
When you're buying them off the street, they're so cheap and they're so easy to get hold of. And people think, you know, like my sister, everything's going to be okay, oh, I'm going to have a better life. But you're not always going to. One day you're just going to end up dead.
Now her children face their first Christmas without her.
Me and my mum, we have to be strong for the kids. So we have to put our grieving on hold because we have 2 children to support. With Christmas coming up, it is hard, you know, because they're not going to be waking up to the mum.
The government told us they send their deepest sympathies to Sarah's friends and family, and they're committed to regulating weight loss drugs properly. Rebecca Barry, ITV News.
Oh, what a desperate story. And the thing that emerges from it that will strike all of our viewers, I think, is how easy it is to get hold of these drugs that can be deadly.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, firstly, I just want to make it really clear that what we're talking about here is completely different from the authorised prescription-only medication you can get to treat obesity. We're talking about unlicensed, and in this case, illegal products. Clenbuterol is banned because, although it does increase muscle growth and reduce body fat, it has potentially fatal side effects, and yet I've seen it for sale online. It's often in appealing packaging and flavours. We don't know for sure yet what caused Sarah's death. North Wales Police have told us that the paperwork has been sent to the coroner, but as you heard in that report, her family firmly believe that it was these fat-burning drops that were to blame. What's clear to me that is that often with people who are so desperate to lose weight, often they are suffering with mental health problems, and combined with the easy availability of these drugs and a lack of awareness about the potential risks, it means that people take risks that are simply just not worth it.
Yeah, desperate. Rebecca Barry, thank you. And if you or someone you know has been affected by illegal weight loss drugs, then you can contact the ITV News investigations team by emailing investigations@itv.com. OK, well, now let's get an update on what is making the news tonight. 3 members of Sarah Sharif's family are facing jail over the 10-year-old's death in what police say was one of the most difficult and distressing cases they have ever dealt with. Sarah's father, Irfan Sharif, and stepmother Binash Batul were both found guilty of Sarah's murder. Dozens of people are being investigated for their role in the Post Office Horizon IT scandal. The police officer leading the investigations told ITV News he's optimistic they'd be able to bring charges sometime in the future. Now, football's world governing body, FIFA, today confirmed the widely expected news that Saudi Arabia is going to host the World Cup in 2034, an announcement that immediately triggered controversy here, with politicians and human rights campaigners describing the decision as, in the words of one, complete sports washing. Downing Street described Saudi Arabia as an important partner. Our sports editor Steve Scott reports.
Saudi Arabia, Mabruk.
FIFA President Gianni Infantino realising his dream today, gifting Saudi Arabia football's biggest prize. But there would be no questions about how we got here or what conditions the hosts face, given widespread concerns over the kingdom's human rights record.
I fully trust our hosts to address all open points from this process and deliver a FIFA World Cup that meets the world's expectations.
Ahead in the next decade, a huge desert infrastructure project, including 15 new stadia built largely by millions of migrant workers. Qausar Khan recently returned to India after 5 years in Saudi as a labourer. He says he worked very long hours and his accommodation was 10 to a room. I'm working in the heat, he says. I feel faint and I thought I'd rest in the shade, but they wouldn't let you rest. No matter what your state, you had to get the work done. Like neighbouring Qatar before it, Saudi is likely to host a Winter World Cup, deeply unpopular with most European clubs who already face a congested calendar. For the Saudi government, the tournament is the pinnacle of a rapidly expanding portfolio. Critics call it sports washing. The Saudis say it's key to their strategy to boost tourism, inspire its young population and to drive reform. Only in the last week, Prime Minister Keir Starmer endorsed the Saudi regime, chasing investment in the UK on a brief visit there. But outside, scrutiny will inevitably continue to highlight the treatment of migrant workers, executions, the fact homosexual relationships are illegal, and women's rights. The English FA backed Infantino's pet project today, but revealed it had asked its Saudi counterparts to ensure all supporters, including LGBTQ+ fans, would be safe and welcome, adding it would work with FIFA to oversee commitments respecting all human rights are delivered. Steve Scott, ITV News.
Police have arrested 10 Manchester United fans over a fight that took place in September. A series of dawn raids was conducted this morning to arrest fans who not only organised but took part in the brawl with Dutch supporters. The police held a number of suspects, including a 64-year-old man. And train managers working for Avanti West Coast are set to strike over Christmas on the 22nd, 23rd and 29th of December. Routes from London to Birmingham, Manchester and Glasgow will be among those impacted. Family and friends of a teenage photographer who was famously pictured sharing a hug with the Princess of Wales gathered to remember her life today. 17-year-old Liz Hatton, who died last month, was a dedicated photographer despite suffering from a rare form of cancer. She met Kate while at Windsor Castle to take photos of Prince William at an investiture ceremony. Our royal editor Chris Shipp reports.
It will be a party, not a funeral. Those were the strict instructions Liz Hatton left for her family. And there was only one photo of her on display today. The rest were those she had taken in what was an ambitious, yet ultimately short time between her diagnosis and her death.
We love every single one of her photos because they're all a memory. They're each behind each one.
You've got so many memories.
There were a total of 50 of Liz's photos at her party today. Precious memories for her mum.
We try very hard to keep it together as much as we can now. It's harder now. She's not here, but yeah.
Not allowed to cry, remember?
Not allowed to cry, and when you do, you better get yourself up,
pick yourself up
and do something positive, because that's what Liz would do.
Yeah.
Everybody say cheese.
Liz's photography bucket list, as she called it, came to my attention when she was invited to Windsor Castle to take photos of Prince William and then had this photo taken with Kate. Liz spoke to us afterwards and I was struck by the brave and courageous way she faced what lay ahead.
I would rather have my time to doing my photography and being with my family.
Chemo stopped working and she stopped having it. The timing of the visit with the Prince and Princess of Wales just coincided with that. The offers started flooding in and we were able to say, yeah, we'll come tomorrow. Yeah, we'll come the day after.
Before today's exhibition got underway, we had a guided tour from Liz's little brother, Matteo.
This one would probably be my favourite.
Yeah. Liz and Matteo were very close.
I shaved my head in like the end of January.
When she started her chemotherapy?
Yes.
They did try to bring Christmas forward, but Liz died a day before their planned celebration.
But ultimately we've got an 8-year-old, so somehow, however hard the day is, we will find a way, because we'll do it for Matteo, because it's what she would have wanted us to do, and it's what he deserves. But
Santa's still going to come.
Santa is still going to come.
It will be, because it always is, a hard time of year to grieve. Chris Shipp, ITV News, Harrogate.
Remembering the remarkable Liz Hatton. Still to come on ITV News. Parents put the papier-mâché away. This nativity's casts are the real deal.
And it's another night to wrap up warm. I'm here laid up at Leeds Castle in Kent, waiting to give you the national forecast amongst the festive lights. See you in a couple of minutes.
Well, do join me and Alex after the break. We'll see you then. And welcome back. It's time for the weather now. And Alex is at a very festive-looking Leeds Castle, which is not in Yorkshire, it's in Kent, by the way. And looks pretty chilly, Alex.
Absolutely, Mary. Yeah, good evening. And of course, as you say, you would be forgiven if you thought Leeds Castle was in Leeds, like I did the first time I ever heard of it. But this is my second time here, and it is looking absolutely splendid here this evening, really soaking up the atmosphere. We're getting into the Christmas spirit, despite it certainly being on the chilly side. And there is plenty to see and do. 95% of the lights here are also run on LEDs, and the trail is pretty busy this evening, but they certainly have had some quieter nights over the last couple of weeks since they have been open, because they've had to close twice, once for Storm Bert and also for Storm Dara, but no storms on the horizon at the moment, so things look like they're going to be flowing here as we head through the next few days. Dry here this evening, but everybody is wrapped up warm with temperatures dropping. Perhaps not as cold as last night. In Scotland, it got down to minus 11.2 in Perthshire. Very cold. Could be similar to that as we head through into this evening as well. But let's take a look at our pressure pattern as we head through the next few days. And it does show the high pressure, which is in control at the moment. And that's why it has been relatively on the quiet side, despite that nagging chilly wind which has been with us up and down the country, making it feel that bit colder. But as we run through towards the end of the week, a little more changeable, and certainly some drizzle is on the horizon. Let's take a look.
Visibility may be low this evening as the cold weather hits. Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.
Well, as we head through the rest of this week, as I say, we are going to hold on to the high pressure. That will keep things settled for the time being, but at times we will see some patchy drizzle developing as we head through the next few days. And it does look like the end of the weekend, after a bit of a chilly blip Friday into Saturday, things will start to turn a little less cold into next week. It could be quite changeable at times. The winds are expected to pick up. But let's take a little zoomed in look actually of the UK at the moment. And as we head through the next 24 hours, you can see that high pressure pretty much dominates. So it will keep much of the weather fronts at bay, but there could just be a bit of patchy drizzle developing coming in off the North Sea coast. So let's take a look at this evening, and up and down the country, relatively quiet conditions, a fair bit of cloud the further south you come. Again, with those clearer skies across Scotland in particular, and also for Northern Ireland, another chilly night expected. The nighttime lows that are going to pop up on the chart are really representative of built-up areas, so maybe -1, -2. But it is in those sheltered glens, say in Perthshire, where we could get down to -11 yet again. So a pretty raw night to come here. Very cold start tomorrow. Temperatures will really struggle like they did through the daytime across parts of Scotland. But as we come further south, again, we're going to hold on to a fair bit of cloud cover over much of England and Wales. Temperatures, no great shakes, but also feeling a bit colder in that nagging wind which stays with us.
Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.
Well, that's the way it is looking here in Lees Castle this evening in Maidstone in Kent. Lovely, as I say, bit chilly, but certainly lit beautifully. And I'm going to take a bit of a stroll right now, Mary.
All right, Alex, thank you. And finally, at primary schools up and down the country, a time-honoured Christmas ritual is underway as parents anxiously gather to watch their little ones appear in the annual nativity play. But at Home Grange School in Wokingham, things have been a little bit different. This was a living nativity, complete with real live camels and a donkey. Gary Davis reports.
Jesus our Lord took his first breath.
It's December, and for most pupils and parents around the country, it means nativity concert time. As depicted in many TV Christmas specials, the experience is fairly consistent. Not for Home Grange School in Wokingham. There, they really try to bring the story to life. Lots of the animals live at the school, looked after by pupils who study animal care. But these three are hired in.
You know, when we grow older and we do leave the school, it'll be something that we look past and saying, hey, I rode camels at my school and it was a brilliant experience.
What's it like being up there? It's quite high.
The walk is quite side to side. It's still very comfortable, just like an armchair.
The dismount's quite scary when they go down, but otherwise, yeah. They do seem to pee quite a lot, though. I'm slightly nervous down here, I'll be honest. There are still plenty of classic carols, but instead of singing in a school hall, each scene of the story is told in a different location around the grounds.
I think by doing the story and taking them through all the scenes and the different parts, aspects of the Christmas story, I think it just makes it real for them and enables them to be in the shoes of the characters that they're playing.
And of course it means that no parents have to make animal costumes.
Absolutely, definitely.
It's certainly memorable, though it might be meeting camels and not the story of the birth of Christ that really sticks.
It's not every day you get a camel at school, is it?
I just love the real camels and the donkey because I really liked its sound. It was quite fun. Like a...
That was really good. Yeah. Well, from the animals, the cast members and audience too, it's a very... Carrie Davis, ITV News in Wokingham.
Well, Tom's here with news at 10, but from me and all the evening news team, bye-bye.